Everything goes pear-shaped. Okay, quick question for you. Who remembers the game show Family Fortunes? Yes, a generation that grew up like I did. Awesome. I'm going to move this. Okay, so Family Fortunes. There we are. That is the old school logo. It's not until, just a quick side point, it's not until you start looking for things that you remember as your childhood, you realize they still run today with them just ripping off everything that was cherished in your childhood and not doing it quite as well. So Family Fortunes still runs, but it is not the classic it once was. But the game was very simple. Contestants would gather as a family, and they would be asked to give an answer based on a question. And the question had been asked to the general public, and the general public are given a collection of answers. So things such as best pizza topping would obviously have cheese, pepperoni, no one would dare say pineapple, and you were awarded points depending on how you did in that process. So this morning is nothing to do with Family Fortunes, but the game will allow us to get into our heads a little bit of an understanding of what we want to focus on. So I'm going to steal its format. So the question is this. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 answers. Not a definitive list, just before anyone bites my head off. But the question is, what can you forecast? So what can you forecast, okay? So you can shout out, and we will award you points based on however generous I am feeling, depending on your answer. So let's go with shouting out, and if no one shouts out, I will just pick on people, okay? So help a neighbor, shout. The weather, okay. Top answer. The weather. So we can forecast the weather. Trust me, from here on in, it just gets a little bit harder. So we can forecast the weather. What else can we forecast? Okay, I've broken it down more, so yes, but I needed more answers. More niche. Oh gosh, I'm so niche. Go, there it is. 1, 2, 3. 3 economy-based answers. Bank rate? No, not that intent. Gosh. I hope you've not got any lunch planned. Okay, let's go. Keep going. Just shout things out, and if I hear one. Christmas is coming. That's a point that I make, but not in this. Okay. Pardon? Tithes, no. Football results, interest rates, no, no. Days of the week, no. Cost of living, can I squeeze one of these into, no. Okay, you know what, no. We're going to go with budgeting as cost of living. So budgeting can cover cost of living, because this otherwise is going to be the entire morning. Inflation, no, gosh. I told you it wasn't definitive. I went with like vaguely easy things, I thought. Happiness, no. This is all very dull, I'm afraid. Not the news. Not life expectancy. All of these are right, just so you're aware. Please hear me. A real quick point here. All of them are right. They're just not the ones that I selected on my very now, quite apparently, non-definitive list. Success, no. Not day of delivery, not football results. You know what we'll do is, to save time, is I will tell you. So one very common one, when you Google it, is sales. You can forecast sales. Amazing, thanks, Si. So you can forecast your sales. In on that, and this ties into Christmas and everything else, is you can forecast consumer behavior. There you are, see? Some fancy words in there, spell checked it and everything. So you can forecast the weather, you can forecast sales, you can forecast budgeting, you can forecast consumer behavior. This one, if you've ever tried to drive in Wales, will make you laugh. But apparently the government spend a huge amount of money forecasting traffic patterns. Basically, we'll all get stuck at some point on the motorway, I think is their conclusion. And then the final one, forecasting within the business world, as I said, not a definitive list, is you can forecast your staffing requirements. So by no means a definitive list, but is just an idea of what to forecast is. Can I go back to, sorry, I don't know how many slides I skipped. It's just my face. Gosh, I'm glad at some point this goes from where we are into something far more important. Okay, perfect. I'm going to go back to this one a minute. So as I said, it's a list, but not a full list. But forecasting is a very simple technique. What you do is you take historical data, and you look at current trends, and then you make an educated prediction on the future events or outcomes of the area in which you have placed it. It's not a guarantee, but you're using all of the information you have around you to give you the best educated guess. So anyone that works in forecasting, I apologize I've used the word guess, but your best educated guess at what will be the outcome. You look at the information around you and you use it to consider what may well happen. And in many cases, you will respond accordingly to what you have gathered. It happens all around us. Someone mentioned Christmas shopping. So shops will have spent most of 2025 looking at the sales trends of 2023 and 2024 and looking at the way that you have purchased throughout 2025, and they will have molded their entire Christmas campaign around you and parting you with your money and giving it to them. So they would have spent all year forecasting their Christmas kind of campaign and how that would work. I wonder how many of you did this. We check the weather before we make our plans, and we will wear the according clothing, depending on what the weather's going to do. We are forecasting. We don't necessarily realize it. How many of you, when you pack for a holiday, pack based on the climate you're going to, the weather that's expected there, the activities that you would like to take part in that are available to you in that place? We don't necessarily realize it, but we are constantly forecasting. We're constantly bringing together all the information we have to give us the best opportunity to work out what we will do next. It's an incredibly surprising human process once you sit down and begin to think about it. And it's one that we see worked out and working through the passage that we're going to look at today. But this isn't the point, but it is a fascinating point when you begin to consider this. Paul's ministry has been guided by forecasting. It's been guided by forecasting. It isn't written like that, but he's managed his future plans based on the logistics of travel. Remember, there wasn't motorways and planes available to him. On the stability of the current establishment, going to places where there were people that would receive him and people that would help him further that gospel mission that he was on. He looked at the resources available to him and looked at how to subdivide his staffing. Again, not written like that, but we see it. And then, of course, we have this incredible one that we don't want to overlook. When Paul is forecasting his mission, he is being led by the Spirit, helping him to understand, to see a bigger picture of what is before him. So if you have a Bible with you, because this morning we're going to be looking at a good chunk of Scripture, and within that we see this incredible impact that the gospel has on a community. But we also see the impact that having the gospel present will put on those and the way that they forecast what is to come in their own futures. So if you have a Bible, would you turn to Acts 19 as I invite Tim to come and read from verse 23 for us. Thank you, Tim.
About that time, there arose a great disturbance about the way. A silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought in no little business for the craftsmen. He called them together, along with the workmen in related trades, and said, "Men, you know we receive a good income from this business, and you see and hear how this fellow Paul has convinced and led astray large numbers of people here in Ephesus and in practically the whole province of Asia. He says that man-made gods are no gods at all. There is danger not only that our trade will lose its good name, but also that the temple of the great goddess Artemis will be discredited. And the goddess herself, who is worshipped throughout the province of Asia and the world, will be robbed of her divine majesty." When they heard this, they were furious and began shouting, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians!" Soon the whole city was in an uproar. The people seized Gaius and Aristarchus, Paul's traveling companions from Macedonia, and rushed as one man into the theater. Paul wanted to appear before the crowd, but the disciples would not let him. Even some of the officials of the province, friends of Paul, sent him a message begging him not to venture into the theater. The assembly was in confusion. Some were shouting one thing, some another. Most of the people didn't even know why they were there. The Jews pushed Alexander to the front, and some of the crowd shouted his instructions to him. He motioned for silence in order to make a defense before the people. But when they realized he was a Jew, they all shouted in unison for about 2 hours, "Great is Artemis of the Ephesians." The city clerk quietened the crowd and said, "Men of Ephesus, doesn't all the world know that the city of Ephesus is the guardian of the temple of the great Artemis and of her image, which fell from heaven? Therefore, since these facts are undeniable, you ought to be quiet and not do anything rash. You have brought these men here, though they've neither robbed temples nor blasphemed our goddess. If then Demetrius and his fellow craftsmen have a grievance against anybody, the courts are open and there are proconsuls. They can press charges. If there is anything further you want to bring up, it must be settled in a legal assembly. As it is, we are in danger of being charged with rioting because of today's events. In that case, we would not be able to account for this commotion, since there is no reason for it." After he had said this, he dismissed the assembly.
Tim, thank you. It's a real privilege to have such a significant reading on a Sunday morning, to spend some time in the Word, and just gives us a wonderful overview of what we're going to focus in on this morning, to get a full grasp, rather than just that snapshot of what I want to talk at, of what we see happening. We're not going to look at the whole passage, but there are a few things that I want to draw out from it this morning. And there's two things we have to understand. The only way that we can understand this moving forward is to have these two things set in motion, and that is this: the way, which is referred to as how first century believers referred to themselves. What we would understand as the Christian movement was often referred to at that time as the way. So we just need to have that in our minds. And then we have this character, Demetrius, who is a local businessman, a silversmith. And really, it's these two elements that come crashing together and play out before us, dragging other people into what we've read. Now, verses 1 and 2 are superb, and I feel like there's so much here. We could have spent our whole time just looking at these. We're not going to, but we read this in these first two verses. So it's 23 and 24, but the first two verses that Tim read to us. About that time, there arose a great disturbance about the way. A silversmith named Demetrius, who made silver shrines of Artemis, brought in a lot of business for the craftsmen. The way. The way, that's how you and I would be referred to, should. From this, we can conclude, to follow the way should cause a disturbance. I'm very comfortable with that. We should work against the established culture of the world when we are present in it. I'm very comfortable with that in what we read and the way this plays out. So we should be having an impact in the lives of those around us. Not always negative, I hope, but we should be having an impact. Now, Demetrius made his living by crafting and selling trinkets and such like for people that would represent Artemis, the mother goddess. So you've got these two elements. You've got the way, these followers of the gospel of Jesus, and you have this local tradesman who makes trinkets, memorabilia for a goddess. And what will come as no surprise to any of you is that is a clash that is not going to work. And it is going to cause a tension. They do not mix very well. And this reminded me as I read through this passage of one of my favorite theologians and the author who I've referenced before, Shane Claiborne. And he puts it like this as he tells his own story. I know there are people out there who say, my life was such a mess. I was drinking, partying, sleeping around, and then I met Jesus, and my whole life came together. God bless those people. But for me, I had it together. I used to be cool. I was prom king, for heaven's sake. Then I met Jesus, and he wrecked my life. Then I met Jesus, and he wrecked my life. And what we're seeing in this passage is just that. Demetrius isn't down for Jesus and the way wrecking his life. He doesn't want that. So we just need to go back a moment to our forecasting and why we started. Ephesus housed the temple to Artemis. It It was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. It would draw thousands upon thousands of pilgrims from all over the empire to it. I would suggest Ephesus was a good place to be a silversmith making trinkets at this time. You have a big temple. This is our forecasting moment. A big temple, lots of people, local silversmith making trinkets, booming business. This is business forecasting 101. Place yourself at the hub of demand and be there for the people. So when the way comes along and starts telling people that actually you don't need to go to this temple and you don't need to sacrifice to this goddess because actually there is a God in heaven, you can understand that those locally who are making a thriving business off of people coming to the temple are going to be unimpressed. Their forecasting is telling them this is a negative situation for business. Please hear that. This is all based, everything we're about to read on is this forecast. This is negative for business. Many of the theologians and people that think and have talked about this set of passages would argue that Demetrius had zero religious interest. He is not bothered spiritually about any of this. What he is bothered about is, bottom line, if we stop having the temple, business is not going to work as well. So he has done his forecasting. He's realized that if the way gets its way, it will have a huge impact on his life, and he's not crazy about it. So everything we read is following on from this moment. This realization that in the not-so-distant future, an inconvenience of lifestyle will be brought about because of Jesus. That's what we have here. To quote Claiborne, "Then I met Jesus and he wrecked my life." The truth is this, some people, and we see it in this passage, and we see it all around us, are quite happy to say, you know what, I quite like my life, and therefore I'm not really down for Jesus wrecking it. People are quite comfortable with the idea that they like life. And they don't really want things to be changed. So what he does next is fascinating. I want you to listen as I just read through these verses. If you've got your Bible with you, I'm reading from 25, but just listen, remembering that everything that we read here is as a result of him not wanting his lifestyle to change. That's what we're reading here. He is protecting his lifestyle. Yes, his livelihood, but the lifestyle that he is able to live as a result of that livelihood. We read these words. He called them together, along with the workers in related trades, and said, "You know, my friends, that we receive a good income from business. And you see and hear how the fellow Paul has convinced and led astray a large number of people here in Ephesus, and in practically the whole province of Asia. He says that gods made by human hands are no gods at all. There is a danger not only that our trades will lose its good name, but also the temple of the great goddess of Artemis will be discredited, and the goddess herself, who is worshipped throughout the province of Asia and the world, will be robbed of her divine majesty." He's called together these people who will be impacted by the way. He's pulled them together, and then he's done this amazing thing. We begin to understand he's got a little bit of a silver tongue here, because notice there's a switch in the way that he talks. We receive a good income from business. Paul has convinced and led astray a large number of people. He says that gods made by human hands are no gods at all, and the flip. There is a danger not only that our trade will lose its good name, but also the temple of the great goddess of Artemis will be discredited, and the goddess herself who is worshipped throughout the province of Asia and the world will be robbed of her divine majesty. It started protecting his own pocket, and by the end of it, he's somehow taken on this role as religious protector of something significant to the whole of the province of Asia. As I said, nearly everyone who's written about these passages would say he has zero interest in the act of worship. But by the end of his little speech, he is protecting the well-being of all of those who would come to worship. Rooted in a very simple point. He does not want to be out of pocket. And this raises a fascinating point for us. Because I would go as far as saying that 90% of the time I've watched people reject the challenge and the call to follow the way is because they do not want to lose the lifestyle that they have crafted for themselves. Just have a think for a moment. Those people that you've interacted with who have engaged maybe a little bit with the idea of church and of Jesus often will have rejected it based on the fact that they don't really want their lifestyle to change. But the way they will present that fact is fascinating. Because to say to you, you know what? I don't really want to embrace Jesus because I'm not so keen on the fact that I make a huge amount of my money from shady business, and actually I quite like making a lot of money. Maybe they wouldn't say it to you like this. You know what? I quite like the idea of Jesus, but I really am not down for the idea of coming to church on a Sunday morning, because on Sunday mornings I make it my job to have not remembered what I did Saturday night. Gosh, you've either got very good friends who are honest with you, or it will probably present in another way. They'll say something that makes sense, that's more valid, that speaks like Demetrius, saying, you know what? It's not about my money. It's not about me. This is all about the goddess and her divinity. It's not really about me. We use this line as a safety net, as a protective glass from the truth that Claiborne so eloquently spoke. Then I met Jesus and he wrecked my life. People are aware of that and they don't like it, so they will protect themselves. They will find reasons not to allow their lifestyle to be changed by encountering Jesus. In a moment, we're going to bring ourselves to a close and look at what this means for our lives and the impact this should have on us. But before we get there, there's one thing that I think is fascinating in this account, and we're going to just focus on that for a moment. Before we do, a quick recap, how we have got to where we are. The way the followers of Jesus have started to create a problem for people and the happy lives that they are living. That's how this starts. One such individual who's impacted by this has decided to mobilize a response to the economic and social issue that he faces. That's where we are. We find ourselves in the local theatre, and the place is in uproar. And we read this in verse 32. The assembly was in confusion. Some were shouting one thing, some another. Most of the people did not even know why they were there. This is crucial. This is so important for us. We can't overlook this, even though it seems like a throwaway verse. We read this in 1 Corinthians. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. These two verses stand in direct contrast to one another. There is a group of people in confusion, and we have a God who is the author of peace. So we know now, by all conclusion, that this is a moment that is more than simply people. We have to admit this is now a moment where we have the devil at work, in amongst and in the way of the work of Jesus. That's what we have here. This confusion isn't just written as a throwaway comment so we can get a picture of the theatre scene. We are now understanding this is in direct contrast to the God of peace. Most of the people did not even know why they were there. That's the level of confusion that is being created amongst the people, but they have found themselves in this gathering. And what we have in this amazing moment for me is the veil being pulled back. This is now moving from simply an earthly moment to this spiritual battle that we see being played out. The veil is removed and we understand this is a place of confusion and riot. And we know the truth that God is a God of peace. So therefore, this is not an element at which we see God at work, and we can, I think, quite safely conclude it is the opposite. The enemy is having his way. Most people have no idea why they are there. They are swept up in the mass gathering, shouting, but unaware of what they're shouting. A frenzy whipped up amongst this crowd. Why? Well, to begin with, because Demetrius doesn't want to be out of pocket. It seems ridiculous, does it not, that this has been born out of someone's greed. And yet what we see it doing is creating a foothold for the devil to begin to be at work amongst the mass of people. The devil does not want the way to progress. I wonder if you would just reflect with me for a moment how much of life is best expressed as not really knowing why I am there. Not really knowing what I'm doing. I'm not really sure what the motivation was. We can see it in different ways. But the way I've managed to kind of bring it together the best in my own understanding and within my own walk is, why do I feel so much remorse after something bad? Why do I feel so much remorse after something bad? Because in the moment, it's all that I'm focused on. It's all that I desire. It's all that I'm chasing after. I will pour time and effort and resources into this thing. But the moment of conclusion, the moment in which I see some clarity, I feel remorse. Why? Because it is safe to say in those moments, I am not thinking clearly. Please hear me, I'm not defending the actions, but I'm not thinking clearly. I am in a state of confusion. Who I know I am and who I know God is being blurred by being a participant in something I'm not really sure of. But for many of us, that moment of realization of the sinful pattern that we are in is filled with remorse. Why? Because when we see clearly, we understand that it is contrary to who God is calling us to be. It's the best example I can see of what we see in this moment. The devil is having an absolute field day with confusion. I wonder how many people went home and were asked, what did you do today? And they just have to say, I don't really know. But there was loads of shouting. What was it about? Not really sure. A great example is if you've ever had the privilege of working with young people and a group of young people have caused trouble and you sit down and you speak to this group of 6 or 7 young people, I guarantee you at least 3 of them have not got the foggiest why they were there. It's just what their friends were doing. And they can't really tell you what the object of whatever it was, let's say vandalism, was. They were just following the crowd. Again, I'm not excusing the behavior, but we have to understand there is more at play in and amongst this. This is an incredibly important moment because there are people being led astray with no understanding of why they are being led astray. The 2 reasons: someone's livelihood is about to be messed up, and Jesus has rocked up. The way is present, and it is causing a disturbance. You see, I've come to this conclusion as I spent time in this passage and in my own walk. The devil really quite likes it when our life is in a comfortable cycle. A non-offensive, non-mobile, comfortable cycle. And he's quite happy to leave us here. Any of you who have ever had the privilege of reading the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis often talks of this, the realization that actually for the devil, sometimes we don't need to be doing these heinous things. We just need to be doing nothing. As people who are called by very definition to go and make disciples of all nations, nothing is exactly where he would like us to be. So this idea that we would encounter Jesus and it would somehow wreck our lives is something that he is not down for. So we find ourselves in this amazing moment. This moment of confusion, this moment where people are being drawn into something they don't really understand and making choices and decisions that could have a huge impact on the rest of their lives from a state of confusion. Because someone likes their lifestyle. Someone likes the way they do life and they don't want things to change. All of this is very well, reads very well, gives us a good understanding of what's happening, but I don't want us to leave this place being able to assume this is a story about others and therefore we all get off scot-free. So I want to ask you a very deliberate question this morning. Where in your life do you need Jesus to wreck? Where in your life do you need Jesus to wreck? Where is too comfortable? Where is he not present? Where is it about you and not him? Please hear this. It's not that Jesus is about to wreak havoc. Remember what we said. God is the author of peace. But is there a very lovely, comfortable part of your life that isn't actually a part of the way? Isn't part of that call to follow Jesus? You see, Jesus isn't worried about making a little mess. If you're worrying that I'm making that up, just see for reference him flipping tables in the temple. Jesus isn't above making a little mess to bring about his kingdom come. So what is there in your life that needs to be wrecked? Where are you so comfortable that simply choosing to change isn't going to cut it? We often tell ourselves, don't we, I'd make better choices. It's going to need more than that. What is there in your life that needs to be wrecked? Where are you so comfortable simply choosing to change isn't going to work? And wreck seems so appropriate as I've spent time in this passage because the pushback is going to be hard. We've just seen that. The way is coming in. These Jesus followers are present. And the comeback is a near riot in a theatre as a result of the word of God. So if you think in your own life you're going to be able to make a simple choice to follow him more closely and not receive any challenge to that, then you are wildly mistaken for how important you are to the devil.
This isn't just about losing money. This whole story is built on this one individual forecasting that he will lose his income if the way is beginning to gain momentum in Ephesus. But there is something more here, because what it tells us is through that greed and that love of his lifestyle, he has given the devil a foothold in his own life and played out in the masses in this theatre. So this is very important for us to get our heads around. So just thinking and trying harder not to is not going to work. And that's why we need to know that Jesus is down for wrecking parts of our lives that need removing by him. Now, writing this in my office is a very comfortable place to write this. And I realized wreck is quite an offensive word for some people. It has a level of dismay in it. So I decided to find passages that would allow us to soften it for us on a Sunday morning. So maybe you prefer the idea of lay aside. Lay aside the deeds of darkness and put on the armor of light. Lay aside's a nicer word, right? Rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, slander of every kind. Gentle. Put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness. But as much as I tried to find a way to soften it, I became very aware the Bible is quite comfortable with the idea of wrecking. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature, is a fairly hard sentence if we start to look at what it actually says. And then finally, Jesus himself, it appears, is not above using this kind of language. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that the whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better for you to lose one of your members than the whole body to go to hell. I'm going to suggest wreck might be the gentle version of what Jesus would be using about your life and the areas in which the devil has a foothold. And remember, none of this is because he is coming in to whip up a storm. This is about bringing you into a place of peace. This is about you coming into the place in which Jesus always intended you to be the whole version of who you are. I can say this with full confidence. This whole passage, this whole outworking is an act of love, because it comes, and we need to remember this, it comes after the moment of the cross. Jesus isn't just rolling in because he's got a regime that he thinks will work better. This is because he went to the cross and died for you and I because he loves you. And the work of the cross is not just simply the cross. It is that whole life process of following him. Please hear me, the cross finished that call on our lives to death. It opened up relationship with the Father and gave us access to eternal life. But it was not simply meant to be a full stop in your life and go, I've arrived. The cross worked. It was that call to allow it to impact everything you do from that point forward. The language that we use of Christian is so misleading in many senses. To be a disciple of Jesus is a lifelong journey. And that's what we see here. The way is coming in. And the way is saying you need to change the way you are living your lives to fall in accordance with God's plan. So it might be that we find the wording uncomfortable on a Sunday, but the danger is the comfort of our lives will distract us from who Jesus is calling us to be. So I ask you again as I begin to close, where in your life do you need Jesus to wreck? If Jesus himself says it is better to cut off your right hand, I think it's a very genuine question for us to ask on a Sunday morning. Where in my life do I need Jesus to wreck? For those of you who are wondering, as I close, I would suggest a good guess, a clue to where to begin is the area of your life pushing hardest right now to justify why it's valid. The part of you that's beginning to wonder if you can just not think about it, because if you don't think about it, God won't know about it, is probably the area God is quite hot on, and he already knows about it. Where do you need Jesus to wreck part of your life so you can fall closer in line with the person that he has called you to be? The part that is pushing back is probably the best place to begin. If you're beginning to think I'm being rude, I'm overzealous, if that area of your life is pushing back, I would suggest that is the place to begin. Because it is the veil being pulled back, and it is the place in which the enemy is most likely to have a foothold in your life. The way, this movement of Christianity that moved across the globe in those early stages, is in the business of messing up the world's order. That's what it was doing. It faced such fierce opposition. Why? Because it was messing with the established world order. And instead it looked to live within the echoes of the words that were spoken. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So where in your life do you need Jesus to wreck? For this to become your way of loving, of living, of ushering in his kingdom come through the way that you live.